In this video, I want to tell you why you need to suffer more, right? And this video comes very heavy to me because I had an elder brother who passed recently, and I really wished I kept on hammering this message because his activities were pleasure seeking, but guess what? They were so pleasure seeking that those same activities led to his death. Now, I've been afraid to make this video because at the point of his death, he never saw his daughter, who was giving birth to about 2 months, about 30 something days after his death. And sometimes I ask myself, could all that pain have been avoided? And I figured that somebody else might see this video and might understand this concept and might change his ways. You see, we live in a world where we have looked down on pleasure to the point where we avoid pleasure. But because we avoid pleasure, that creates a bigger problem. Because the pleasure we enjoy now comes to haunt us with pain in the future. But where it gets amazing is the pain or the suffering we endure now comes with its own pleasure in the future. Because according to Isaac Newton's third law of motion, which is also laws that happen in nature, that says for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And now, so there are two kinds of suffering that people go through. There is one, unchosen suffering. This is how 90% of people in this world are suffering. This is where all of the anxiety, all of the depression, all these ideas come from. You see, when people say depression is not real, it's because some people who claim to be depressed, they don't understand what is really happening. This is why when Andrew Tate, you may not like him, but Andrew Tate made a statement. He said that he saw a man who says he's depressed, and he says, guy, go and have 6 packs and tell me whether you are still depressed. And the guy went and got 6 packs, and guess what? He felt like his depression went away overnight. But what really happened? Did his depression go away overnight? You see, what happened was he went to the gym. Going to the gym alone is an accomplishment. I'm going somewhere. He began to have 6 packs. He began to work out. Now, he began to put his body in a state of joy, happiness, bliss, where he's getting those chemicals that come from working out. Whether it's endorphins, dopamine, all those chemicals are making him feel good about himself. And guess what? He was beginning to wire himself to feel happy, and before he knew it, he began to have the identity of somebody who was happy. Now, fast forward to when he had the 6 packs. Now, by the time he had 6 packs, to him, he had an achievement which 90% of men don't have. He had achieved a level of discipline. In all, he had a level of suffering that was worth it. And guess what? His depression went overnight. So what that tells you is most people who are depressed or anxious or something are either people who have not gone through any form of suffering, or they are suffering for the wrong reasons. You see, this whole idea of suffering is simple. Pick something that you believe is worth suffering for and suffer for that thing. Automatically, the reward comes. Yes, there is useless suffering. Like, for example, is people who are working menial jobs doing some stuff does not mean that it will help them build strength. So useless suffering is suffering that you don't get the point of, or you cannot see a benefit from in the future. But at least it is better than chasing pleasures for its own sake. I remember my brother, like I said, I've avoided telling this story because it makes me feel like I am profiting off his story, and that is the last thing I think I will ever want to do. But if somebody gets this message, it's good. But choosing suffering, you choose something to suffer for because you know deep down that that thing you're suffering for is going to give you pleasure in life. That is the whole idea of making money, because when you make money, you become a better person, a different person that you are proud of. You begin to have achievements. I never wondered why, and it is the same thing you see in the gym, in business, in all walks of life, that people who are suffering, guess what? Who are intentionally suffering, they have a level of joy that they work with. The men who have become very capable, they have gone through a level of suffering that the average man can't even think about. So I tell guys, there's really no reason for you to dodge suffering. Embrace it, right? Because like I've said, it's either you choose the suffering you're going for, which will bring happiness in the future, or you stay relaxed, you chase pleasure, and what happens? Unwanted suffering comes around. Subconscious suffering comes around. You see people who are couch potatoes. I have never seen anybody who is a couch potato who says he's happy. No, I'm not saying fat people. I'm referring to somebody, because there are fat people at the gym. I'm referring to somebody who sits down on the couch, does not do any form of exercise, does not work, and says he's happy. I have never met. I don't know of you. So this should be a message that if you can pick a goal, this is why, if you ever notice, the men who are the most happy in this life are men who are on their purpose, who know that they are currently working on something, and this thing that they are working on ultimately is a blessing to them. It's going to be a blessing in their future. Because why? They get the message. But most guys, it's sad that most guys never get that message. Most guys have this idea that, oh, I don't want to suffer because suffering is pointless. No. Suffering is pointless if you don't know what you're suffering for. Like I said, there is chosen suffering, there is conscious suffering, and unconscious suffering. Most people are suffering because they are going through unconscious suffering. It's like this idea of coasting through life. When people say you are coasting through life, means that you have no purpose, you are doing nothing. And you mostly see this from people who have rich parents, who have well-to-do parents. They are very relaxed, thinking that life is going to go well for them. You see, that's an illusion that I lived with, because my father made life very comfortable for me. But I'm grateful for seeing mentors very early in my life, and one of those mentors is Jordan Peterson. By the way, your mentor does not have to be somebody you are physically with. I consumed Jordan Peterson's content, and he introduced me to this idea of suffering for a cause. And ever since, I began to have this idea that what am I suffering for? It's completely changed my mindset. I just have a very funny kind of looking body. I really wish I was so bad. I was feeling very bad about my body that I barely took pictures about my own body. I would avoid the mirrors. I would wear double shirts. I would wear like inner wears than shirts, just to hide this my man lumps or man boobs. But by the time I began to go to the gym, lift weight, have a better diet, guess what? I had an intentional suffering to be, which was my body. What else? My diet now. I remove diets that cause some form of, should I say, dopamine crash in my system. And guess what? I feel very fine most of the day. Right now, I've not had any meal. This is 1 p.m. I've not had any meal, and I feel fine because I eat quality food. Now, these foods are really not interesting. They're not super spicy, but guess what? I know that they sustain me, they keep me full, even for close to 24 hours, basically. Because sometimes I eat once a day because I aim to eat quality food. I'm not saying this to brag, but it's to tell you that if you don't pick something to suffer for, automatically suffering will come for you. And think about it. Have you seen anybody that you admire who never went through a form of suffering? If you can point out one person, I can point out the life of somebody who is currently suffering. Now, I remember some guys talk about how some girls, because of their looks, never have to suffer. Have you ever spoken to very attractive ladies? Ladies who a lot of men shower with gifts just because they are very beautiful. Have you seen how their lives are? The ones who just use looks for everything. They have zero personality. They have zero sense of humor. They're just there. If you ever have a conversation with them, because you realize that these guys are just shallow. I'm not insulting them, but most of them, they rely on those looks for their survival. I'm not referring to even sugar babies, or I mean, you can't even have a convo with them. Every convo you have with them just feels like you're killing yourself. Now, I've seen attractive girls, very beautiful girls, who you can have amazing jokes with. They understand sarcasm. I mean, if a girl understands sarcasm, I clap for her. So the message here is simple. Be intentional about suffering, and that is the whole idea of goals. When you're intentional about your health, know what you're suffering for, because if you know what you're suffering for, you will endure it. This is why a lot of people will have goals and they give up, because they're not falling in love with the idea of the end result and the process. If you have an intention for suffering on your body, you know the kind of body you're going to work with. That is why a goal is being set. There is no goal that does not have a suffering before you get there. So I really just wish that more guys can get this thing, because we have guys who are going through addiction, a lot of depression and anxiety, bad friendships, just because they have this idea that they don't want to suffer. And that idea of not suffering itself creates a form of suffering that they do not want to happen to them. When my brother passed, I was listening to a podcast around that period, like a few days after. I think it was Dario with CEO. Then they spoke about how they had a research of people who live life carefree, Like they enjoyed the pleasures to the maximum, they party, they drank, they're just carefree about their life. Guess what? They said that in that research, none of them lived past the age of 30. And what hit me hard was my elder brother just turned 30 a few months before he passed. And I was just there screaming with this podcast in my ear, shouting, what the fuck just happened? And like, I really wish that I made this video earlier, because I'll be thinking about it. He has a daughter who was giving birth to 30 days after, and if he knew how much suffering his daughter would just go through because of his actions, I think he may have had a rethink about what he was doing. And as a last note, my brother had a note on his phone promising himself that the moment his child is born, he will change his ways. He will begin to have something to suffer for. Now, I'm saying, as a guy, you don't have to wait to that last moment to have something to suffer for. Start suffering now. Pick something, pick one thing to start suffering for. The moment you begin to enjoy the results of the thing you're suffering for, I can bet you pick up other areas of your life to suffer for. Because every form of suffering comes with pleasure. Every form of suffering comes with, even as a man, tell me a man that people really respect has not gone through a form of suffering. When people diss Andrew Tate, I say, wait, Andrew Tate knows how to fight. He's confident. He is rich. But guess what? Maybe because of how the media has painted him, people are cancelling him. No. That guy is somebody who has results based on what? Suffering. Because there is no way you can have results without suffering. Medical doctors suffer. Everybody suffers. So if you made it far in this video, it's obvious that you take yourself very, very serious. I want you to do somebody a favor and share with somebody who will find it valuable. Let's get more guys suffering. Let's get more guys understanding that suffering is not a thing to be avoided, but a thing to be embraced. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, and bye for now.